Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's 7:30 in the morning in Los Angeles, California. I hope wherever you are, you're having a great afternoon or a great morning, or if you watch this later, a great evening. I am Adriana Linares, and I'm the host of LawTech Connect on Litera TV. Normally, I have guests that come on and I interview them about their unique areas of law. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I should take this opportunity to make sure and thank Litera for allowing me to do that. I had a guest cancel last week just because, the times are weird. And rather than scrambling to secure another guest, which I never like to do to any lawyer's calendar or anyone's calendar, I decided to use this as an opportunity. Times are weird and there are all sorts of funny and strange things, weird and wonderful, as I call them, going on in the world. And one of the things that happened last week, which I thought was incredibly embarrassing for the entire legal profession, is a very important document was filed with the Supreme Court, and there was a misspelling in the name of the defendants, or maybe it was the litigants. I don't even remember, actually, because that's how little I pay attention to those sorts of things, other than the fact that it shed a light on the usual that I spend my life training and helping lawyers with, which is understanding some pretty basic Microsoft Word settings and things. So I thought I would take today's half hour and go over my favorite tips and tricks for Word, but specifically some settings that would help any lawyer in the future avoid such embarrassment. So with this particular setting, it's very simple. See, Microsoft Word does this silly thing and it defaults the spell check to not check things in all caps. So if you worked in a regulatory environment, in a medical environment, and even in the government environment, obviously, where there's a lot of acronyms, or maybe there's an area of law where there's tons, maybe you work in IP, maybe you work in manufacturing, there's tons of acronyms. That might be okay, because who wants to see a bunch of red squiggles under all the acronyms that you know are not misspelled? They're just acronyms. So you have to know to go in and turn off that setting, along with a bunch of other settings that I think that could be helpful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sharing my screen. I'm going to go through these Word settings. I'm in Microsoft Word 2016 for the PC. If you're a Mac user, all of these settings exist in there somewhere. I've got a couple of documents on Microsoft Word settings for legal professionals. I need to update them, actually, but if you're interested in the actual document, maybe you want to pass it around your office, please email me at training@lawtechpartners.com. Tell me if you're a PC or a Mac, and I will update that over the next few days and get it out to you. So what I'd like to do now is just start sharing my screen. I'm going to move Zoom over to the side here. And hopefully you can see my screen. And I will just ask the man behind the curtains at Litera to confirm, or the lady, that you can see my screen. Okay, oh, great. All right, so here we go. I'm going to open up Word. And I'm going to start with that one specific setting and a couple of other settings that you want to do sort of on the back end of Word. And then we'll come back into the document and I'll address the most frequently asked questions and issues that people ask me about. And let me say this. There's one thing I cannot stand hearing, and that is I hate Microsoft Word. If you hate Microsoft Word, it's because you haven't had training on it and you haven't taken the time or found someone to help you understand it. There's literally nothing to hate about a software program. So hopefully a couple of these tips will help if you are one of those people, or if you're a WordPerfect user, which I know I still get a lot of WordPerfect users. I do a session called Life After Reveal Codes. Yeah, Word can be hard because it's not exactly the same as WordPerfect. It does everything that WordPerfect does, believe me, especially does reveal codes, and I can sort of address that a little bit here. But what I really encourage you to do is take some time to learn how to use Word. I mean, that was just embarrassing for the entire profession, regardless of which side of the aisle you are on, to submit a document to the Supreme Court with Louisiana misspelled. Just terrible. All right, so some back-end settings. You're going to open up Word. You're going to go to File, Options. There's a lot of stuff in here. And if you haven't ever slogged through the windows and the settings and the windows inside of the windows in here, you really should. You'll learn a lot and you'll probably get a lot less frustrated with Word if you did. So specifically, we're going to start with proofing. So if you go to File, Options, Proofing, you're going to see that what is checked right here by default is ignore words in uppercase. So I've had lawyers call me and say, my spell check is broken. Agreement just went out with 4 E's in it. Go, probably in the title of your document or in the heading. It was probably in uppercase, and Word just did what it was told, which is ignore it. So you want to uncheck that. You also might want to tell it to ignore internet and file addresses. What that does is it just turns anything that starts with a www or an HTTPS or a .com, or it recognizes as an email address, it turns it into a link. Oftentimes we want that, but sometimes maybe you want to have the option to do that, but that might just be something you consider. No big deal there. So while we're here in file options, let's look at a few other settings that you might want to adjust. One of the things that people say to me all the time, I hate when Word turns a C in parentheses into the copyright symbol. Well, it's likely that, again, unless you're in IP or doing USPTO work, you're probably not using the copyright symbol every day. And every time you put a C in parentheses, which you might use every day, it turns it into the copyright symbol. So there's a way to prevent that from happening. And while we're in file options, proofing, you can go to autocorrect options right here. Autocorrect is a list of words most frequently misspelled and mistyped words. It also has a bunch of other settings, and it has some of these shortcuts built into it. So when you go into that dialog box, you'll see there's a bunch of choices here: autocorrect, auto format as you type, actions, and math autocorrect. While we are here on autocorrect, which is where you land, you'll see that there's a list of replaced text. So Word will automatically replace a C in parentheses with the copyright symbol, an E in parentheses with the euro symbol, an R with the registration symbol. So here, if you never, ever use the copyright symbol and you're just positive you're never going to need it, and it would be way too much trouble, or it's not too much trouble to go to insert special characters, then you can just delete this entry. So you would highlight it and delete it. Or you can change it. So instead of a single C by itself, how about every time I type a CR, it replaces it with the copyright symbol. So I can replace some of these settings instead of just deleting it. So I could delete it, and you can also add your own. And this is a really short, easy tip. If there are words that you misspell all the time just when you type them. So for example, I can never type the word group. I always type gropu. I don't know, it's super weird, but I type the word group all the time because I'm talking about group training, group sessions, let's get together as a group. Well, pre-pandemic days, I used it a lot more. So I go in there and I tell it to replace gropu with group. You could also use this for really short autocorrect or auto replace. So if my initials are Adriana Linares, I could tell it anytime I replace .al, I would have it replaced with Adriana Linares. Now, why did I put a dot in front of that? Okay, a couple of reasons. The word et al, is a real word. So if I happen to type et al, which I don't that often, but occasionally I will in an email, I don't want it to replace et al with Adriana Linares. So I put a dot in front of it. I put a dot in front of all my shortcuts inside a Word. It also keeps them sort of alphabetized in that list down there together. So you can use this a little bit to help you with things that you type all the time, but I'll give you another tip, which is if you do this inside of Word, those auto replacements, all the quick spellings are going to be tracked inside of Word. So if you want something that's a little more universal, I think very popular in the legal world is Text Expander. So textexpander.com is an amazing tool that will do these sorts of things, but across all your programs, across all your devices. It even has an app for your iPhone. So if you're interested in doing something like this on a bigger level, go take a look at Text Expander. But as long as you're inside Word, you can certainly do it in here. And also you can add a custom dictionary. So let's say you do MedMal, or there's a special area of law that maybe a lot of the words are Latin or medical or complicated. You can always add your own dictionary as well. Okay, a couple more things while we're in here. Auto format as you type. There are a couple things in here that I'll mention basically because people ask me about them. In legal, well, this one's actually really important. A lot of times when you're doing real estate work, you don't want fractions being replaced with superscript fractions, so you can actually turn that off here. Same with ordinals. If you're typing first, second, third, ninth, and it turns it into superscript, if you uncheck this box, it won't do that anymore. By the way, side tip, whenever Word does any of these things automatically to you, if you catch it at the moment it happens and you press Control Z or undo, it will undo that auto correction it made for you. So some of these you might want to turn off permanently, and some of them you might want to decide, well, just Control Z as soon as it does it. But these are your choices. People will come in here when they see this and they will turn off automatic bulleted lists and automatic numbered lists because they get frustrated when trying to create a numbered list. Here's what I encourage you to do, not that. These are helpful settings. What you're better off doing is learning how to deal with automated bullets and lists and also how to set your own defaults, which I can't get into today in half an hour, but I would encourage you to just learn how to use Word a little bit better. Instead of turning off these settings, I mean, some of these, excuse me, if you turn them off, you're basically turning Word into a typewriter. So you might as well just get a typewriter. But I encourage you, just become a better Word user. So there's a bunch of other settings in here you can tinker with. I don't want to spend too much time on them. I just want to give you some of my favorites, the top hits that I get asked about all the time. Here's where you can add custom dictionaries. So again, if you've got a medical dictionary or any other special language dictionary or just a list of words that are constantly getting flagged as misspelled, you can update custom dictionary. Okay, a couple more things we want to do while we're in here. I want to go to the advanced tab. The advanced tab has a couple of settings. It actually has a lot of settings. So again, go through, learn what all these do, check and uncheck the things that you want Word to do or not do in order to make your life easier. But a really important part of dealing with Word, and I'm going to spend a few minutes on this in just a minute, is dealing with cut, copy, and paste. By default, when you paste into a Microsoft Word document, it pastes with all the formatting. So if you're out on Lexis or Thomson Reuters doing research and you've copied some text and pasted it into your document, and let's say your document is in Times New Roman, you paste it in, comes out as Arial. The reason Word does that is because by default, these settings here under cut, copy, paste are set to keep source formatting, which means you're dragging in baggage from the previous relationship that document, that text had with a document into the new relationship that you're trying to form with that text. So the best thing you can do is learn not only how to use cut, copy, paste in a smart way, which I'm going to show you too, but this is one of those settings that you can change the default so that when you do paste into a document, by default, it keeps text only. You'll always have the choice to go back to keep source formatting, and I'll show you how that works in just a second. But typically, I just encourage everyone to change all of these to keep text only. And what that's going to do, it's going to bring in the text that you've pasted without any font and without any paragraph formatting. So it should match whatever you're pasting into and around and just leave the text only. Yes, it will remove hyperlinks, italics, bold, underline, all of those things. So you just have to reformat if that's part of what you're trying to do. But this is a really good setting. And if there are paralegals or assistants watching this in the future, go do this to your attorney's computer. It'll make your life a lot easier in having to deal with a document that they want you to clean up afterwards if you don't have to deal with a bunch of weird formatting. So that's a really good one. And I'm going to show you a little bit more on cut, copy, and paste in just a minute. Let me look at my list here. And then one more thing that I think can be helpful. If you use a lot of cross references or have complex page numbering or just a lot of code in the document, necessary code, one of the things you can do is down here it says field shading. Instead of when selected, if you change this to always, it will show in gray where there are cross references or any other sort of references in the document. Typically what happens is you have to click on it and then it shades it in gray. If you turn this on, then your whole document will always show in gray where those field codes are. So that can be very helpful. Again, if you've got a document that does a lot of cross-referencing, table of contents will be all in gray. Of course, they won't print that way, so don't worry. They don't print that way, but it does show it to you on the screen, which I think could be helpful. The last setting that we're going to talk about in here, and remember there are hundreds, so I encourage you to go through all of these settings, is having to do with track changes and sending documents out. So I'll tell you a really quick story about my early years as a legal technology trainer. I was 26 years old, I think. I got hired at one of the largest law firms in Florida. I didn't know anything. I still feel like I don't know anything. But one of the biggest issues we had was that documents kept going out with track changes being turned on. And this was in 1998, 1999. And this firm, like many others at the time, had switched from WordPerfect to Word. So the whole Word world was new. And I was new to basically the whole world, especially as a professional. And it was something we really struggled with. And we did, this is so funny. This firm actually used policy group settings in Microsoft, and we took out the whole toolbar for track changes. Can you imagine? I mean, it's just hilarious to think how little we knew back then, and how easy it would have been to solve that problem with just training. So one of the settings that was around even back then, but it was really hard to find, kind of like it is today, is to have Word warn you when you are about to email, save, or print a document that has track changes or comments or notes in it. The way you get that warning is, again, File Options Settings, which is where we are now. Go to Trust Center, a very not obvious place to go for a setting like this. Then you go to Trust Center Settings. Then you go to Privacy Options, also not super obvious. I mean, we are definitely digging into the deep, dark depths of Word here, right? And you'll see that there's an option right here. It's just not checked by default. Again, like, it's funny the things that are checked and the ones that aren't. But if you check this box that says warn me before printing, saving, or sending a file that contains track changes or comments, it'll warn you. A little pop-up comes up and says, hey, this document might have or has track changes or comments. So the thing about this is that sometimes maybe you're working on a document that you know has track changes in it, but you hid the track changes so you could read the document without all that visual clutter. And you forgot, so you're about to email it out. Or maybe there are comments on, page 90 of the document. You've only scrolled through the first 4 or 5. This is another really good setting to turn on and just be warned, because what harm is there in a warning? All right, so like I said, there are a ton of other settings in here that are really important, but we're going to go out to the document now so I can show you a couple more things. I want to talk real quick about setting default font. This is obviously something that everyone struggles with until you figure out how Word works. Microsoft Word is born, every document that gets created is born with a default DNA. And that default DNA is the font size, the spacing between paragraphs. So a while ago, what Word did to us is they replaced the default settings from what was Times New Roman with single spacing between to Calibri 11 and a smidge of spacing between paragraphs. So how do you change that? Let me explain this. You can't go back and change existing documents because, I mean, you can, sorry, let me make this clear. You can go back and change those documents, but what I'm showing you here is on a go forward basis, changing your default font and spacing for future documents. I can't go back and just sweepingly change all my past documents because those are still embedded, encoded with whatever font and font size they were born with. You can manually change those. And you would do it in the same way that I'm about to show you here. So what you do is you open up a brand new blank document. You have to do this in a blank document, a brand new one on your computer. Go to File, New, Control N, whatever format you like to open a brand new blank document. You're going to look at the styles, which styles is, again, one of those things that people like to say, I hate styles. Let me tell you something. You wouldn't hate styles if you knew how they worked and you understand what they did. They are critical to creating good looking, consistently formatted documents. So you're going to look at the style section, though, to do this one thing, and you should see a style called normal. Whenever you see the word normal in Microsoft Word, just think of it as the word default. So that style right there, the one that's referred to as normal, is my default style. And a style is nothing more than a collection of font and paragraph formatting in an easy button. So if you look at the rest of the ribbon, we've got font formatting and paragraph formatting. If I were to have a set of these buttons depressed, pushed in, and made exactly the way I want my text to look all the time, I would save those settings in a style. Word gives us hundreds of styles. It's almost ridiculous. And the one we care about the most is normal, because it's like the first domino in a set of dominoes that fall. So you first domino, and it just sort of sets the pace for what all the other styles in the document are going to look like. So the default font, the normal style is important. How do you modify it? There's 2 ways. Actually, there's probably 5 ways. I can only really show you one at a time with limited time. So I'm going to show you one. You're going to right click on the word normal, on the normal style. You're going to right click on it and modify. In here, it should say name normal at the top. And then you'll see what normal is set to. So mine was set to Times New Roman. I must have been doing some training. Let's set it to Century Gothic. That's the font I like. And I'm going to set it to 11. Once I've done that, I've set my default font. Now there's a lot of other things in here. You don't want to mess with them. For example, I get lawyers who say, okay, yes, I'm going to set my default to be justified because all my documents go to court and they should be justified. Don't do that. This is your most basic building block and you want it to have the most basic formatting. And the reason is very simple. Think about this. If you had an address, you know, you were sending correspondence with an address or even a date in the middle of the document, you don't want that text trying to stretch itself from margin to margin. So with the normal style, you set the absolute most basic settings, which is formatting, font and font size here. As you become a better word user, you can of course modify more of these things. The key to this dialog box is once you have made this change to your font and your font size, you want to make sure and check the box that says new documents based on this template. Super important because remember, we opened up a brand new blank document and we're setting the defaults for all of my future brand new blank documents. I'm going to click OK. You can also get to that dialog box by hitting what I refer to as the insultingly small button in the font section of the ribbon. So if I click this button, it's going to take me to the dialog box for font. You'll see I could reset it in here. Maybe I'll change it to Century 12. And there's a button here that says set as default. And then the pop-up comes up, basically the same as the other dialog box that says, do you want to change that for this one document? And maybe there are occasions where you do. So let's say your default font is Century, but you're about to file a document with the courts and you're going to put it in Times New Roman because that's just tradition, not because the court requires it. No courts really do that anymore. But let's just say for this one document, you want to set the default. Then you would choose this document only. But again, in this case, I'm trying to set my default for all documents based on normal ... And remember what I said earlier about the word normal. Normal equals default. So I'm going to click OK. To change your font spacing back to what you all know as single because you just insistent on it and don't want that extra space to make your document easier to read. If you want to change your default font, you're going to do the same thing except in the paragraph section of the ribbon. You're going to hit the insultingly small button in the bottom right-hand corner. You're going to open up the dialog box for paragraph. You're going to leave the alignment at left based on what I just said earlier about default. Just leave it at left. You don't want the whole document trying to justify itself. You're going to leave everything else and you're just going to change where it says spacing, whatever it had to 0, and change the spacing back to single. You'll see something funky in there, like I think there's 6 points after, and then the line spacing says either multiple or exactly 1.06, something weird. You can change that. So then I would click, of course, this very important button that says set as default. This document only? No, all my future documents, I want them to go back to 1999. No, I'm kidding. So those are 2 real quick settings for setting your default font and your default line spacing. And then let's talk about how those decisions affect cut, copying, and pasting. So real quick, another critical efficiency tip in Word is understanding how the clipboard works. And if you haven't activated your clipboard, oh man, you've been missing out and doing way too much work, cut, copying, and pasting, which is a lot of what we do in legal, into getting your formatting right. So the very first section of the ribbon is called the clipboard section. It also has an insultingly small button in the bottom right-hand corner. You're going to click it. You're going to open up this clipboard pane. You want to come down to options and make sure everything here is checked. Because what this does is it allows the computer or the clipboard in Word, and by the way, the clipboard also exists in Excel, PowerPoint. It actually exists in all of Windows now. If you press the Windows key and V, you get a system-wide clipboard, which is awesome. Okay, we're going to just a side tip there on the system-wide clipboard, but back to Word. The reason you want to turn this on is because it allows you to go to a document or an email or the internet, anywhere, and copy, 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 and then come back to the document and paste, paste, paste. What you're doing now is copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, and that's inefficient. So let's say I wanted to grab this paragraph, the opening paragraph from my bio. Another quick tip for you, triple click a paragraph to select it. 1, 2, 3, selects the paragraph. Now I'm going to right click, copy. It goes on my clipboard. And if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that now that I've activated the clipboard, I get a little note that says, okay, I've got one item on the clipboard. Great, I'm confident it's there. I don't need to run and paste. Then I can come down here and I can say, well, I want this sentence. Another shortcut for you, control click. So press the control key on your keyboard, single click, that selects a paragraph. I'm going to right click, copy that. All right, so now my clipboard actually flies open. You can turn that off in one of those settings down in options if you want. I don't mind it. And I can even right click, copy this picture. I can right click, copy my signature. I can come down here and copy anything I want. Another little quick tip for you too, by the way, is if you put your cursor in the margin of the document, you see how it changes from a giant I-beam to a pointer? I can point and select one line at a time and copy it. You can double click to select one individual word. 1, 2, selects a word, and then I can copy it. That's a little bit easier than what some of us try to do, which is select the word, then we get the space or we get the period. So if you learn these very simple clicking tricks, you can also become quickly more efficient. All right, as you can see, I've copied, I've got all this stuff on my clipboard. If I come back over to Word, and I show the clipboard, all of my clippings are here. So now I can just pick and click. I'm going to pick and click to insert, oops, that shouldn't have come over, to insert that paragraph. Then I can pick and click to select the next paragraph. And then I can pick and click to select my next clipping. An important thing with cut, copy, paste, right, is what I talked about earlier, where by default, Word will bring in the formatting from previous experiences, right? It brings in that formatting. So one of the things you can do is when you're about to paste, right click, paste, if you're a right clicker, you'll see that there are those options here. Keep text only, sorry, unfreeze Word. We're going to take a quick break while my computer catches up. There we go. Okay, right click. You'll see these paste options. They are by the first option. Remember, I changed mine to keep text only. Keep source, merge the formatting where Word says, okay, you've got Times New Roman 12 over here. You're pasting into Calibri 11 and it's bold. I'm going to give you some sausage that I make from both of those. Sometimes it works out really well. So you can usually hover over it and see, it's giving you a preview what it's going to look like before it pastes it. Typically, keep text only is the best option if you've not changed your default. That's going to bring the document in with the default font. So, last lesson, real quick here. Many of us choose to change the default of a document's formatting or its font by doing this, Control A. And then I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to change everything to Times New Roman. When you do that, you are not changing the default font for that document. You're basically just painting right over it with another color, and the original color is underlying behind it. So look, if I look at my normal font up here, I can even see the little preview. That's not Times New Roman. So that means that if I go to paste text into this document and I paste text only, what font am I going to get when I do that? The default font, because I'm telling it to paste text only, go back to its roots for this document, which is Calibri. That's one of the reasons you get so frustrated when building documents based on text from other places. So in an existing document or an old document, you always want to look and see what the default font is. Here's the example I use. I rent a lot of cars because I travel a lot. I never get into a rental car and just take off. I sit down, I figure out how to adjust the steering wheel, I adjust the lights, I figure out where I open the gas, how I turn the, you don't want to do that while you're driving. You take a minute and look around beforehand. So every time you open a Word document, old, yours, borrowed, someone else's, take a minute to look around and see what the default font is, see what the default spacing is. Set it for that document. Keep text only, your life will become a whole lot easier. I hope you all enjoyed these tips and tricks and got some new ideas about how to use Word better. And wishing you all a really wonderful holiday season. And we'll see you next year as LawTech Connect with Adriana Linares, that's me, starts a whole new year.